Hey readers, welcome to the fifth and final book review that I'm recording today, although for you this will be weeks after the other ones. But today's review is actually a book that is very similar to a book that I have previously reviewed, but it's by a different author, and it does have some differences. So I also reviewed the first one that's like this one years ago before I went on hiatus on this channel because school got really busy and everything. It was one of my earlier reviews, and I figured this is a good book. I want to review it, and I also just don't have as many nonfiction books on this channel because that's not what I read as much, but this is a good book, and the first one of these was one of the first non-fiction-y adult. Cosmos is growling at a toy right off screen, and sneezing. But anyway, today's review is Yoshifumi Miyazaki's version of Shinrin Yoku, the Japanese art of forest bathing, and I have previously reviewed a book, Shinrin Yoku, the Japanese art and science of forest bathing, which is a separate one by a separate author. This is different. Cover is very different. I don't think I have a picture of the cover in the other one because I was doing a different format of these reviews back then. But this one, I really like both of them. They both are really good because they talk about Shinrin Yoku, which, if you don't know, forest bathing, it's basically going out in nature and absorbing it with all your senses, and not just like listening to music and headphones and not like exclusively looking at your phone to always be taking pictures. It's about going and actually like absorbing nature and experiencing it as fully as possible. And in this they talk about how there are certain trails in Japan, because Japan is where this practice originates, that are actually specifically designed for forest bathing, and as you hike up these mountains or these trails, there are actually little cafes every now and then that actually make tea or other cuisine from ingredients from the forest, so that allows you to actually taste the forest as well as hear it, smell it, feel it, see it. So that sounds really fun. Like they talk about how as you go up, I can't remember what mountain it was, they were talking about this one where like every few miles or kilometers they had a little coffee shop type thing where the change in elevation on the mountain changes what edible plants are there, and so there would be kind of these unique little recipes made from the surrounding forest, which I think is such an interesting idea. I just love it sounds so fun to experience that. I think the closest that I've gotten to that is like stewing pine needles in tea and stuff when I've been out in nature sometimes. But I think that this one is also really interesting because I believe that the author of the first one that I reviewed is actually a Chinese author who is a leading expert in this, but the fact that this author is Japanese I think is really interesting because it has a whole chapter in here that the other one didn't have, which talks about the importance of nature in general in Japanese culture, and kind of how that influences why this is such a deeply rooted Japanese practice. And it's very, very interesting. I also just have to say both of them have amazing pictures throughout. There are just so many. This one also has a lot of Japanese proverbs. And so this one says, "Mountains are not esteemed because they are high, but because they have trees," which is a Japanese proverb, which kind of goes to show the importance of nature in culture historically there. The cherry blossom trees, just the pictures in this are so beautiful. This is in a section where they talk about significant trees in Japan. So it talks about cedar, kadomatsu, bamboo, cherry blossom, and bonsai. And I really like the way that this book, and the other one did this too, but I think that they do it really well, where they kind of interweave how to practice this with how their research is and what they're researching. And this has found that forest bathing, Shinrin Yoku, has a lot of different health benefits. It can help with stress, it can help with immune response. It has a lot of health benefits both in the short and long term, and I think that is a really important thing to talk about, especially like in today's world. It talks about how people have started to migrate to like larger cities, and you're seeing like concrete buildings and asphalt and sidewalks and cars and not as much like greenery and nature and everything. And it's talking about how there is a really big importance in being able to see that. I'm not one of those people. I have plants in so many rooms in my house. I think the only rooms that I don't have plants in are the room I use as a gym and the bathrooms. In the bathrooms, there's no plants because there's not enough light. There's not a ton of light here, but that's why I have a grow light. I have a window over there, but I keep the curtains closed. But one of the things that they talked about that was a really interesting study back to like how important greenery is for health is that they did a study where they looked at hospital patients who were recovering from sort of comparable things. I can't remember what it was. I think it was like a specific surgery, and they were looking at recovery time, and the people whose view out their window was like a brick wall or another building took longer to recover than the people whose rooms looked at gardens or trees. Even if it was just a single tree, their recovery was faster, and also they required less pain medication than the people who were looking at just like human-made buildings. Which I think is so fascinating because I've always felt more cheerful and feeling better if I have plants around. I have so many plants in my house. They make me happy. And so learning about the actual science behind that is really interesting. My mom absolutely loves backpacking. It's something that she has to do every year. And it's like her free, happy place to be out in the complete wilderness, and it's so interesting. And in this they also talk about how it's not even just the visuals. If you use like essential oils of certain plants, it can have similar benefits to actually going out into nature. Of course they say going out and actually experiencing the full nature of seeing it and smelling it and, you know, experiencing it that way is better, but seeing it or using essential oils of it can also still have benefits. It's also just very interesting because it talks about how there's places that are designated for this practice that are like forest therapy centers, which I think is really interesting because I feel like that's something that I haven't heard about other countries having that. And I feel like that would be so interesting. They're kind of like both mental health therapy, and also in some cases it was talking about like hospitals having gardens that are like for patients to kind of rehabilitate, which I think is really, really interesting, because I feel like hospitals that I've been to in the US are, they're not very nature-y. Like, there's trees in the parking lot, and maybe there's a few, like, bushes or roses around, like, entrances and stuff, but it isn't, like, none of the ones I've been to have a garden for the hospital, and I know that some places do. The places I've been don't. But I also just think that it's really cool to be taught in this book how to practice this, because even I feel like modern people, even if you enjoy going on walks, so many people do it with headphones, or they're more focused on taking pictures with their camera and looking at their phone, making sure the pictures are good, and not just experiencing it for what it is. And I feel like it's so interesting to have this be something where it's like, just either don't bring your phone or don't work on your phone while you're walking, and like listen to the sounds. There's a park in the town where I am right now for university that has like a little creek that goes through it, and it's really peaceful to walk there, because especially if I go in the day when I'm not having a class but a lot of people are at work or classes, there aren't many people out, especially if it's like before high schools and elementary schools and stuff get out of school. It's really, really quiet and peaceful, and you just hear like the wind and the birds and the stream and stuff like that. It's so nice. Also, the quotes in this are not exclusively from Japanese culture. Like, it had the Japanese proverb, but it also has a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote: "The wonder is that we can see these trees and not wonder more," which is interesting because as an environmental science student, I've studied Emerson a lot in a specific class. He was like a topic for a month. But yeah, the pictures, as always, they're really cool. Like the misty trees. Trees are poems that Earth writes upon the sky is another quote in here by, I don't know how to pronounce it, it's probably wrong, but Khalil Gibran. But then they have like actual scientific data about, this was about the scent of wood and how it affects parasympathetic nervous activity. And so that's interesting. They did a test on flower scent, which reduces stress. They talked about practicing flower arranging, or like having flower arranging, and seeing that they had experiments on bonsai, and it was like whether looking at that is beneficial, and it found that viewing bonsai produced a calming of prefrontal brain activity, an increase in activity in the parasympathetic nervous system, a decrease in activity in the sympathetic nervous system, which increases during times of stress, and an increase in positive feelings. They talked about ornamental plants. They looked at park therapy, which is like going on a walk in a park versus an urban environment. They talked about whether forest therapy can improve or affect immune function, which it can, and it it does help that, actually. They did different test subjects, so they did, like, mature women, they did, like, men, they did patients in wheelchairs for various of these different studies. Again, like, scientific graphs, and they explain really well what these things are, too. Like, they'll explain what the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system are, which makes it really accessible if you're not a medical professional. They talk about, like, brain activity, and they were seeing whether it increased relaxation, and there's just so many really, really interesting scientific studies, but then it also is talking about, like, just, it can make you happier, it can release stress, it can be just enjoyable, too. Like, even if you don't really care about all the science of it, again, like, the beautiful pictures, and it's also, I think, relevant to mention another really cool picture and quote, and, they talk about the different plants and how they have different, properties. They talk about, like, cedar and Douglas fir and eucalyptus and hiba and Siberian fir, and they talk about how to bring nature indoors. This looks kind of like my house. They talk about, like, having the air cleaning plants, which the other one talked about. I think they had a slightly different list, because this one has the peace lily, which I knew, but a lot of the other one said golden pothos, which this list does not have, but these can clean some toxins from the air. They're proven by NASA to be air purifying plants, and it talks about like having baths with essential oils of various trees, wood therapy, nature and architecture, so about, like, the places where they're trying to build greenery and plants into, like, living walls and everything, urban nature, and how places are trying to incorporate that. So that's on the part about bringing the forest closer to home. They talk about there's a word that Japanese has that a lot of other languages don't really have a word for this. It's komorebi, which is the interplay of the light and the leaves when sunlight filters through trees. So, like, this, which I love that word. I love that visual as well. And also they talk about how education and creativity can be enhanced by nature. Things you can do, like spend time in a hammock, stargaze, stretch, and it goes through various stretches. You can do meditation. It has a specific example that you can follow while you're in nature. Use your 5 senses, switch off your phone, and let nature calm your body through all 5 senses. So see things, take in the aromas, listen to the sounds, touch the trees and their textures, take off your shoes if you want to, eat outdoors, whether it's something you brought or something that you get there. Be mindful while you're walking. And then it also talks about specific places where you can go in Japan there are forest therapy bases that are have like specific routines for various things. Like on day 1 at Okutama Town, which is in Tokyo, you do forest therapy, which is like walking in contact with the trees, and then you have refreshments, and then you make soba, and then you do a pottery workshop, and then you stargaze, and then on day 2 you do meditation, yoga, and forest therapy and refreshments. And some of these have like specific programs, and others you just go and walk, and there's like different trails. There's like, you can ride horses or have a dog go with you. There's programs for children. There's just so many. Cherry blossom viewing is really big in Japan as well. So all of that is really, really fun. Cosmos is running in. Hi. He was just outside, so he's all all warm from sunlight. But yeah, it talks about like the significance of specific trees in Japan. It talks about the geography, because this is fascinating. So Japan is one of the most densely populated countries on Earth, and yet 69% of its total area is covered in forest, which is all of this green part, which is really good. The U.S. has cut a ton of their old growth, a ton of their forests in general, so we definitely could not compare to that statistic. And we're not even as densely populated. Fireflies. Just all of the pictures are so amazing. It talks about like the importance of the Japanese culture, nature, and all of that. It talks about there's a quote from Thoreau as well, which also we studied a lot about. It talks about like passive comfort and active comfort and why nature reduces stress. It talks about nature as medicine and what the benefits of this practice are. It talks about how nature and the nervous system are related, and how stress-related illnesses, what stress-related illnesses are, and how if you do a practice that reduces stress, those can be helped. It talks about so many different things that that are affecting health, like urbanization, and also how nature works, and sort of what you should get out of this practice, and like what the concept is. I'm kind of going backwards through this book, so there are just so many things. And also he talks about his background and sort of how he got into it, which is something that I feel like the other scientist did not say in the other book I reviewed about this. I think he was kind of more just like, here's my credentials, and now I'm going to talk about this. This talks about like the whole background story of him getting into it. And so it's a very, very good book. If you're into nonfiction, and especially about like plants and stuff, this is really interesting to learn about all the benefits. If you're interested in like health or stress, mental health, that kind of stuff, again, this is a good one. I also really like this quote. It says, "Not knowing the name of the tree, I stood in the flood of its sweet scent," by Matsuo Basho, which I think is I wish that more people in my major knew that quote, because I feel like I am studying environmental science, and so there's a lot of times where it's like, yes, I need to know what specific species of lichen this is, I need to know what specific plant this is. If I don't know what poison oak looks like, that's bad. Stuff like that, where being able to have a name on something is important. But I also don't understand the people who, and I have people like this in my family, not to call anyone out. And if that's how they get enjoyment, there's nothing wrong with it. But people who see a bird or a flower or a tree, and instead of just being like, wow, that's a really cool bird or flower or tree, they have to pull out a guide to birds, plants, or trees, flowers, whatever, and identify it. It's like, I like to see it or experience it for experiencing it, even if I don't know what it is. And maybe, yeah, it's fun to sometimes identify it, but it's like, that's not my main focus. If I go and I say, oh, I saw a really cool bird, it's not like I took exact notes on what color all of these parts of it were and how big it was and how it flew. It was like, oh, cool bird. If I see a flower, I'm like, oh, that's really pretty, and I like that, and not like, I can't enjoy this unless I know what it is. And so I really like that quote, because I feel like it puts the emphasis on enjoying what it is for what it is, rather than having to know its human determined name to be able to enjoy it. Hi, here you go. But I really like this topic. I think that Shinrin Yoku is fascinating. I think a lot of like these nature-y books are really interesting. But also, as someone who deals with autistic burnout and is a full-time double major where I get stressed about so many things, it is really nice to be able to learn ways to kind of improve that. I've always had a lot of plants around, like my family's house has always had a lot of gardens. I have a lot of house plants, even when I lived in an apartment, and now when I'm living in a house. I actually came back. I was gone for a week recently to do some research for my capstone, and I came back, and these bushes in my backyard, all of them were blooming, and they were lilacs, and it made the entire backyard and the entire area around this house smell like lilacs. And it was just really, really nice, and they were really pretty to look at. I got home after dark, and Cosmos was in the car with me for like the 5-hour drive, and so I let him out in the backyard and turned the light on, and the little lilacs were kind of glowing in the dark a little bit. It was just so pretty, and I noticed that, and I was like, I just like enjoying this, even if I didn't know what those plants were. I do, but if I didn't, I would still enjoy it. But I really recommend this book to anyone who is interested in this type of topic, and especially if you are interested in learning ways to deal with sort of stress or other mental health issues. Not that this is like a cure-all, but for me, antidepressants never worked. Also because I don't think I ever had depression. I think I had autistic burnout, which is not the same. But I found that a lot of my autistic symptoms can actually be benefited by having plants and taking care of them and being around them. Even before I learned about this, I really liked having them, and so I highly recommend this book. It's really, really good for just if you're studying environmental stuff, if you're studying medicine, or if you're just interested in this on a personal level. It's very, very good. But with that, let me know if you've read this book or if you know about this topic. Let me know what you're reading, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. It really helps me out, and keep reading. Bye!